Hello there. I'm going to talk really today about one word in the New Testament. It's a word that in its particular form is only found in 2 verses in the entire New Testament. Of course, we're not thinking about the Old Testament, but it doesn't appear in the Old Testament either, because the Old Testament was written in Hebrew and the New Testament written in Greek. And so if it was in the Old Testament, it would have been put in by a translator. But writing in the New Testament, sometimes we gain a great deal by looking at a word. And it gets confusing in our translations, because in many of our translations, the word, which is the same in the original, is translated with 2 completely different words in our translations. So we don't instinctively see that the same word is being used. So I'm looking at 2 verses in John 14. John 14 verse 2 and John 14 verse 23. In John 14 verse 2, in my version, which is the New Revised Standard Version, it says, "In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you, I go to prepare a place for you." And in verse 23, it says, Jesus answered him, "If a man loves me, he will keep my word, and my Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our home with him." Now the word for rooms in verse 2 is the same word as the word for home in verse 23. So if we use the same word and we use the closest we can have to the original word, which is a place to live, a place to reside, a place to stay, a place to dwell. In the old King James Version, it was, "In my Father's house there are many mansions." Well, there are lots of words for places where we live. We live in flats, houses, bungalows, mansions, palaces, tents. We live in lots of places, don't we? But this word does not describe the kind of dwelling place. It is a dwelling place. It's a staying place. I've looked at the other places, in the lovely story that Jesus told about the 2 men who built houses. The word used there is not the same word as this word for a dwelling place. And when Jesus told people to go into their rooms to pray in the Sermon on the Mount in private, that word for room is not the same word as used here. So to translate this as room is a little bit inaccurate, because if you look at Matthew and you think, oh well, Jesus told me to go into a room privately, and this is a room here, is the same sort of concept. It's not. The word here is for a place to live, a permanent residence, a place to reside, whatever form that takes. If you've always in your mind thought of a mansion, that is a large place with lots of rooms and everything, it might well be. But the scripture just tells us, in my Father's house, there are many places to dwell, places to live, living spaces, if you like, rather than rooms, because rooms kind of defines it. This is a very general word, but it's only used in this place. And it's interesting that when they translate it in verse 23 of John 14, it says, we will come to him and make our home with him. We will come and live with him, dwell with him, take up residence with him. That's the idea. And it's a lovely thing. It's the two ideas held in the one chapter, that Jesus, when he was telling his disciples that he was going to leave and they were going to have to at some point follow him. But he was going ahead. He said, I'm going ahead of you, and I'm going to prepare a place for you to live in, so that where I am, you will be also. And then he talks about, if we love him and we follow him, then he and the Father will come and make a place to live in with us. I like the idea of home, because home could be anything. You know, your home could be a cave, your home could be a bungalow, it could be a flat, it could be a small house, it could be a large house, it could be just a couple of rooms where you're working. Your home is the other spaces in which you live, rather than a specific kind of living place. And this lovely idea that just as Jesus is going ahead of us to prepare us a place where we will live forever with him, he also promised that he and the Father would have a place to live with us permanently, making his home with us. I love that idea that God, we have a home to go to. You know, when we leave this world, we're going home. We're going to the place that has been in our hearts all our lives, the place of perfection, the place where we belong, the place that we can call home. You know, we have been adopted, we have been born anew into the family of God, and the Father has a living place for us in his own dwelling place. It's reserved for you and reserved for me, and we're going home. Whatever happens to us in this world, we are going home. And on our journey home, following the one who is the way, the truth, and the life, as we follow him, as we love him, as we live our lives to please him, so he and the Father make their home with us. It's a lovely thought. Have a great day today, and wherever you go, you'll be taking the Lord with you. God bless you. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.